There are a lot of things that would have been nice to know before chopping off my leg. Allow me to share a few. Newsflash, amputation hurts. Thankfully, there are pills for that. Uh-oh, that pill caused some pleasant side effects. Better add another pill to counteract the side effects of the first pill. Oh dear, now phantom limb pain is starting up. We need to get that to simmer down. More pills. Now you can't stay awake. Let's add a stimulant. Oh, the stimulant took away your appetite and you just realized it's been 4 days since you've eaten. Whoops, better do something about that. Yuck, you've got the stomach flu. Now you can't keep your meds down. Wait, are you going into med withdrawals? I've heard those can be pretty intense. They make you even more nauseous, huh? So it's even harder to take your meds? Looks like you've landed yourself in the emergency room. After some meds through an IV, maybe you can go home and reflect on when the stomach flu used to be simple. I'm not saying every amputee will follow this exact pattern. This was just my experience. The point I'm trying to make is that extreme pain is often treated with hardcore medication. These meds come with risks, benefits, side effects, and sometimes the possibility of addiction or dependency. Discuss your concerns with your doctor. I prefer to ask questions rather than just swallowing whatever pill someone puts in my hand. Medication can be extremely helpful, but it's worth remembering that it's often easier to get on a medication than to get off it. Doctors say that PT stands for physical therapy. What it really stands for is patient torture. I envision post-amputation physical therapy as being mostly building muscle using exercise equipment. Instead, it's been things like dry needling, cupping, and scraping to break apart myofascial adhesions. And it hasn't just been limited to my leg. The way a person walks affects their spine and the rest of their body. I've been told my soft tissue is a lot worse than most amputees. So hopefully it's not as bad for you, but it's good to know what physical therapy can include. A mix of exercise and the ouchie manual therapy is probably realistic. My prosthetist recently told me that amputees with neuropathy or diabetes tend to feel less pain on their sawed-off tibia, whereas CRPS amputees or patients whose legs came off in traumatic injuries often hurt more. In his experience, younger amputees tend to be more sensitive to pain points. Older amputees tend to be less sensitive. I had no idea. It's human nature to base our expectations on the experiences of others in similar situations, including what we see on YouTube. But sometimes there are factors we aren't aware of that significantly impact the outcome. It would have been nice to understand these factors better before amputation, so that when I heard the stories of other amputees, I would have been able to be more realistic in my own expectations. If you also store pine cones in your prosthetic leg, then subscribe and click the bell. And if you don't store pine cones in your prosthetic leg, what are you putting in there? And subscribe and click the bell anyway. Man, this thing holds a lot of pine cones. Who knew? When my leg was amputated, my prosthetist had me come in 6 weeks after amputation to make a mold for my first socket. I was stoked. With past foot operations, I'd been non-weight bearing for 3 months after each surgery, followed by a phase of partial weight bearing. Whereas now I could be up and walking a few short weeks after something as major as amputation. Let's examine what I had right and what I got wrong. Starting the process of making a prosthetic leg in 6 weeks isn't the same as walking in 6 weeks. There are cases where a prosthetist can do something called a direct cast, where he makes the leg all in a day, but don't count on it, especially not for your first leg. A more realistic expectation is to come in 1 week to make a mold of your leg, then come in the next week to try out a test socket, which can be adjusted until it feels good to you. You may end up coming in multiple times for test socket fittings if your leg is sensitive and you're having a hard time finding a comfortable fit. You may also need something called a K-test. I've got a video all about K-levels if you don't know what that is. Personally, I've always needed at least 2 test socket appointments. Some clinics let you take the socket home to give it a trial run. All this takes time, especially if the clinic is booked out. Once everything feels right, your prosthetist will make the real deal, a carbon fiber socket that's more durable, but less adjustable than the test socket. Then, if insurance plays nice, you finally get to take your leg home. I got mine 10 weeks after amputation. Like I said, use caution before basing your expectations on other people's experiences, including mine. We're all unique. What I'm trying to say is that even though the process of getting a leg started sooner than I expected, the process itself took longer than I realized. While we're on the subject of prosthetics, let me tell you something important. Prosthetics are all about pros and cons. If you find the mythical perfect prosthesis, I want to know about it. Because in my experience, it's a series of trade-offs. A leg that's very stable and stays on well probably won't have as much range of motion in your knee. A biking leg lets you bend your knee more fully, but isn't so good for walking. A hydraulic ankle has more motion, but weighs more. You get the idea. The human foot is intricate and difficult to replicate. Technology has come a long way, but it's still far from being a perfect substitute. That's why amputees need different legs for different activities, such as running, biking, or rock climbing. When you have a baby, you get used to carrying around a diaper bag. Gone are the carefree days of walking out the door with just your phone, wallet, and keys. Your prosthesis is like a baby. Rock-a-bye baby. Not that much like a baby. You need to pack gear for it, wherever you go. If you don't pack diapers for a baby, you could end up in a literal mess. If you don't pack extra socks for your leg, you could end up struggling to walk. Yes, my footless leg needs socks. The size of my residual limb fluctuates due to things like swelling, compression, and water retention. The longer I have my prosthesis on, the more compressed my leg is, so its circumference decreases throughout the day, leading to a loose, wobbly leg. It's nothing that a little padding can't fix. Now I know to be prepared with a couple leg socks wherever I go. For better or worse, people often treat you differently if you're visibly disabled. Rock-a-bye baby. This would be really awkward if anyone walks by. Some people are extra considerate and friendly. Others are judgmental and discriminatory. More often, they're just awkward or uninformed. It's something I've gotten used to, but being mentally prepared for it may help, unless that makes you anxious. In which case, I just want to say that I've had some wonderful experiences and met incredible people because they've come up and asked me about my leg. For me, the positive interactions have definitely outnumbered the negative ones. Ever since amputation 2 years ago, my body's temperature regulation has been weird, and it isn't just me. Other leg and arm amputees have said the same thing. Before amputation, I tended to get cold easily. Now I'm constantly too hot. Even in winter when it's well below freezing, I find myself unzipping my coat, trying to cool down. It's worse if my prosthetic liner is on because it traps in heat, though I do find even without my prosthesis, I get hot easier. In fact, this summer I got a burn on my amputated leg, right where the liner is. I have amputee superpowers and can get a sunburn where the sun don't shine. I even got heat rash on top of the burn. I need to find a better superpower. I took a few days off from using my leg and all was well, but I wish I'd known before amputation that temperature regulation would be an issue, because it would have influenced clothes that I bought and other little things. I can feel the wind in my hair. The days leading up to my amputation were extremely hectic. I was in doctor's offices all day, every day. I found myself looking forward to amputation recovery because I thought I'd finally get a chance to take a nap. That was naive. As someone who's given birth and spent time at the hospital with my special needs daughter, I should have known that you never get to sleep at the hospital. Between pain, the sterile environment, and nurses coming in at regular intervals, it's hard to rest. The rehabilitation center was no different. I had occupational therapy, physical therapy, and things like that a few times a day. People would come in to get my breakfast, lunch, and dinner orders. Then I'd get interrupted again when the food was actually delivered. Nurses had to check my vitals and give me medication at regular intervals. There was too much going on for me to get in a nap. Then when phantom limb pain set in, sleep was completely unattainable. I'll leave a playlist if you want to know more about the phantom limb aspect. I don't know if my experience was par for the course, so if you're an amputee, tell me in the comments, how busy was life leading up to your amputation, assuming it was an elective amputation, And how busy was it after amputation? Did you stay long at the hospital, go home, or go to rehab? More importantly, did you get a nap? I really hope so. Amputation is a major physical change. For me, there was a corresponding mental and emotional change. I experienced clinical depression leading up to amputation. I remember one doctor would always give me a standardized depression and anxiety questionnaire. One question asked whether I was worried about something terrible happening. My response, well, yeah. Why do you think I'm here? Losing a limb is inherently depressing, and there are a lot of legitimate worries in the mix. Please know that you're not alone, and don't hesitate to get help. Try to have hope that life continues after amputation, and you'll have happy days ahead, even if it doesn't feel like it now. If you found these 10 tidbits helpful, there are more where that came from. Click over yonder to hear more things that I wish I'd known before amputating my leg. I'm Stephanina. Thank you for joining me on my amputee adventures.